السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم, everyone. Welcome. Everyone hear me? Okay. Inshallah. We had I decided to change this to sort of a more typical Zoom meeting because there's not a huge audience, and I thought it'd be a little more personal that way. Um, Alhamdulillah, welcome to see everyone arriving. Alhamdulillah. I'm going. Um, Someone's AI note taker is here. Let me switch over to my slides. Bismillah, 1 second. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, is everyone able to see my screen? If you could just put in the chat that you are able to see the screen so I can see how people are doing. Admit all. Okay, nice. I see that we can. Um, so uh let's get started, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. It's an honor to be here with the Hidayah Academy crowd. Alhamdulillah, just got back from a week-long trip to California where I got to meet lots of people in person, which was a nice change of pace. But now I'm back to the familiar of doing these webinars and meetings. So I really appreciate all of you taking time out on a busy Thursday evening to come to talk about our children and their success, or maybe some of you are students yourselves. So today's topic: faith as your admissions ticket, how Islamic values shape college success. Right. So I think Alhamdulillah, I've been working with students, as I'll introduce myself a little bit more depth later, but I've been working with students for more than 20 years. And I can say that this college admissions process is one of the most valuable times in their pathway through life, because it is one of the first times that a student is forced to see themselves from a third party perspective. It's one of the first times they're asked to really introduce themselves and talk about what makes them tick, and why they are, what makes them them. And when done properly, it also helps students get in touch with their Islamic identity. That for many students, especially students coming from an Islamic school, and many students for whom is the core of their identity, it's impossible for them to talk about themselves and to write personal essays without referencing the deen. And a lot of times this process helps students recognize how precious the deen is within their lives. And more than that, these Islamic values that our children are practicing also make them incredibly compelling college candidates who colleges are desperate to get on that campus. That's sort of the broad overview of what I want to talk about today. So Bismillah. So let's just refresh our niyyah. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني. Ya Allah, please put khair and barakah in this gathering. Ya Allah, please help all of the students and all of the parents succeed in this world and the next. Please let this meeting be beneficial. Please launch all of us towards your pleasure and towards towards Jannat al-Firdaus and towards success here in this world and help us get the benefit of this gathering. Wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqihi Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallim. Okay, let's get going. So I want to see who's with us. So I think you guys can raise your digital hands. Uh, I think that is where do you see that? Yeah, there you go. So Shafi just showed us how to do that. So hopefully that's clear. So could you raise your digital hand, or you could turn on your camera and raise your physical hand? If you are in, if you or your child is a senior, if you or your child is a senior. So do we just have one? Actually, let's just use the chat. The chat's maybe easier for us to see than the hands. So could if your child is a senior, rather than doing that, let's just say what grade. First of all, are you a student or a parent? Can you put that in the chat? Whether you're a student or a parent, just so we can see who's here. Okay, so we have parent, and student attending together. Nice. Student. Parent, student, and parent, student, parent, student together. Nice. Student, parent. Excellent. Okay, now could you put the year you will graduate? So seniors would be 2025, juniors would be 2026, okay, 2028, inshallah, mashallah. So some freshmen. So you have one senior and a junior, mashallah. So we got quite a few freshmen, some sophomores. Okay, mashallah. So this is great. We have people with a lot of people with students who are, freshmen or sophomores, which is wonderful. Alhamdulillah. All right, so now let's see for this next one. So for this one, can you please put the language that you speak or your parents speak like essentially, is it Arabic? Is it Turkish? Is it Urdu? Whatever language you guys originally speak. Urdu and English mix. Nice. اللغة الإنجليزية. MashaAllah. I like that. So a lot of Arabic, some Urdu, Bangla. What are we missing? Urdu-ish. I like that. That's what my wife speaks. She speaks Urdu-ish. Her family's from Hyderabad, India. She grew up with her parents speaking to her in Urdu and her responding in English. So I'm pretty familiar with that. Okay, nice. So that gives me a little all right, so for parents who are here, could you let us know where did you, if you went to college, if you got your undergraduate degree, did you do it here in the United States or did you do it overseas? You can just say US or you could say where you did it overseas. We have Jordan, US, law, both. KSA, overseas, undergrad in Syria, PhD in US, parents, Bangladesh and US, both, mashallah. Nice. Okay, cool. So that's interesting. And then finally, well actually this question works better in person, but how many people are completely confident that you oh sorry, I misread the question. Uh if you think getting into top tier colleges is all about grades and test scores, sort of a trick question. It's a leading question. So and it works better when people are able to raise their hands. But yes, obviously we'll talk about this, but there is much more that goes into American admissions than just grades and test scores. It is a big part of it, but there is much more. Okay, and let's go on to the next one. People keep on arriving, mashallah. Okay. So 5 facts about me. So Hamza, my name is Hamza Henshaw. I became Muslim when I was 15 years old in 1994. I call myself a Mayflower Muslim because both on my mother and father's side, my ancestry stretches back to the Mayflower. Hamza, I became Muslim at a boarding school outside of Boston called St. Mark's, actually a Christian boarding school, so an unusual place to accept Islam, and maybe we can get into that story a little bit later in the talk. From there, after I took a year off, a gap year between high school and college, but ultimately I ended up going to Harvard. I graduated in 2001 with a degree in Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations. My initial career was in the world of Islamic finance and Islamic investing. But pretty early on, I realized that that was not my calling. And I transitioned to education. I spent more than 20 years as an educator overseas in the Emirates and Morocco, in private schools, one of the top private schools in the country here in New England, and then for more than a decade at the first K through 12 Islamic school here in New England. And it was there that I wore many hats, as most teachers do at Islamic schools. But one of them was being the college guidance counselor. And I looked at the Hidayah Academy website, and mashallah, it seems like it looks like a pretty nice school, good facilities, mashallah. So the school I was teaching at is still growing, mashallah. We're actually located in a former church. But and very much a shoestring budget, not a ton of activities, extracurricular activities. And yet, year after year, we were sending our top students off to Ivy League schools and other fantastic colleges. And after a while, I realized, subhanAllah, I've developed an expertise in helping Muslims, um, gain admission to these top tier universities. And alhamdulillah, what was the best was they weren't just getting into the colleges, they were going to the colleges and having, a hugely positive impact on them. They were going and because their Islamic knowledge was quite a bit more than most of the Muslim students on campus, they were quickly becoming the president of the MSA by their sophomore year and just having a really big influence on the campus. And I realized that, this is something I want to do more of. And so I decided to found a company called Five Before College to help Muslim students navigate this process, get into their dream colleges, and launch them towards success in this world and the next. I'm also an author, and one of the things that I wrote that's sort of relevant for today's discussion is back in 2022, I wrote 30 college essays in 30 days. And later in the thing, I'll give you a chance to download that as an ebook. But the backstory of that is I've taught the college essay for many years. As you know, it's a huge part of the college application process. One of my students said, "Brother Hamza, you always say show, don't tell. So why do you keep telling us how to do the essay? Why don't you show us?" And so when I get challenged by a student, I like to go above and beyond. So instead of just writing one college essay as a sample, I decided to write 30 of them in 30 days, which was quite a process. But it reaffirmed for me what I said in the beginning, that this process of doing the self-reflection necessary to apply to college and to answer write a great personal statement and answer all these college questions is an amazing way to clarify who you are and what you really want to do with your life. And so it's almost therapeutic and extremely beneficial. Let me just check in the chat if there's anything. Um, can you help me get into my dream college? Inshallah. May Allah make it easy. Yes, this is being recorded, and I can send out a let me just make sure it's being recorded. I'm almost sure it is. Yes. And I can send that out along with the slides as well. So good questions. Okay, let me keep going, and inshallah, I will try to leave some time at the end for you to ask questions. So I'll try to go through these slides, but it is a pretty comprehensive uh, presentation. All right, so chat storm. So this is a question for you guys. So what I want you to do is I want you to type in the chat. Don't send it yet, but just type in the chat. What is your biggest question or greatest challenge when it comes to college admissions? So wherever you are in this process, if you're a freshman or a parent of a freshman, it might be different than a senior, right? But whatever is your biggest question or biggest challenge, could you just type that in the chat? And then Don't I'll give you about I'll give you 1 minute to do that, or maybe 45 seconds now. And then I we're all gonna hit return at the same time. Okay, so timer 45 seconds. I You guys don't have to excuse me. You don't have to send them quite yet. It's fun to have them all come at once. It's like a chat waterfall. Okay. Okay. Ready? Three, two, one, and drop them into the chat. Hit return. Okay. Let's see what we have. How to attain a scholarship to an Ivy League college like MIT. Okay, good question. Um, Schools like MIT and top schools actually do not offer merit. I mean, sorry, do not offer merit scholarships. They only offer scholarships for need-based financial aid. They're very, very generous with need-based financial aid, but they meet 100% of demonstrated need, but they do not need to use scholarships as a means of uh, attracting people. So if you are a come from a family with a higher income, then there are definitely schools out there where you can get merit scholarships, but the top universities, they tend to only offer very generous need-based financial aid. Sorry, I don't want to necessarily answer every single question because we'll get a little off track. Not sure if I can get into the top, inshallah. How do you get into one? I have no clue for real. Okay, great question. And inshallah, anything we're saying here is helpful for all colleges, not just top flight colleges. How can I pursue my dean in college? That's a great one, right? How do you stay connected to the dean in college? It's really good to hear. A great question. The college essay, right? So that is definitely a stressful thing for people to pursue. When and how to start preparing. Okay, I'm gonna talk about that. I think like the next couple slides are going to go into that exact question. Is the institution more important or are internships? I'm not sure whether I fully understand. Because the first part is the institution. I was thinking like, does it make sense to go to a higher rated college or another one where you have to spend less money? And that's a very nuanced question and requires a good discussion. And internships, yeah, so internships are definitely extremely helpful. Not just in terms of getting into college, but also in terms of clarifying your goals and things. How to get a 5.0 plus GPA and the effect of colleges to a job. Interesting. Okay, so getting a top GPA requires really mastering the art of being a student. And so we will talk a little bit about that later. And yeah, the effect of colleges on a job, definitely, one of the real benefits of going to a top tier college is that early on in your career, it has quite an impact on the opportunities that you have. But what I would say is over time, within 5 years of graduating, where you went for your undergrad has much less to do with your career success than how you're doing on the job itself and so on. Um, Let's see. Being from a small school that has limited extracurriculars and no college counselor to guide you on opportunities. All right, great question. So I'm actually running a course for administrators and at college counselors at Islamic schools on how to upgrade that program. So I don't know who's in charge of that at Hidayah Academy, but that would be an amazing PD opportunity for whoever is in charge of that. But what I would say is you actually have a real advantage at Islamic schools. I don't think I have the slide in there, but The nice thing about Islamic schools is because they do have limited resources. They also tend to have less like red tape. So a student who is motivated can often create a club or show real leadership in a way that's very difficult at a much more established school with a lot more sort of administrative procedures. So we didn't have Model UN at my school, for example, and a student came and they created this club, and they're the ones who are leading the conferences. We didn't have a soccer team. The students themselves organized and they created the soccer team and they ran, a GoFundMe or Launch Good to get uniforms. And they did all this stuff showing great leadership and great initiative. And it helped them stand out in the process. So there are advantages to coming from a smaller school, but it's important to be able to take advantage of them. Um, what are colleges looking for in extracurriculars? Creative ways to address the statement and essay. Yep. So I'm running a course right now for seniors who are in the college process. So if any of you are in that stage, you might be interested in that. And we'll talk more about extracurriculars, right? So, but I would reframe that question, as I'll talk about later, not in terms of what colleges are looking for in extracurriculars. Colleges are looking for people who know who they and are doing things that really light them up and excite them. So rather than always thinking of it from the college perspective, what are colleges looking for? Think about it from your own perspective. What do I love? What do I care about? Right? You could be obsessed with something that doesn't seem to be that relevant, like pickleball or something. I just got off the pickleball court, so that's on my mind, right? But that doesn't seem to necessarily be relevant to a college, but you could conceivably, start a pickleball for Palestine, charity tournament, Hamza, I started a pickleball club at the Islamic school, and I reached out to all sorts of the, racket companies and explained our situation, and they gave donations. It could become a really great story. So whatever it is that you're into, try to do that, and that will be an extracurricular that looks really great for colleges. Um, I have no clue at all, completely new to the process, and this is my oldest son. Yep, the oldest son is always like, or daughter is like the guinea pig. And a lot of parents, come to me with their guinea pigs, and I think it's stressful, but just see it as a learning experience. This is something that you will get through, and inshallah you will get the guidance that you need, and that's why I'm here, to help as much as I can. Um, let's see. Uh, Interview. Yep. So interestingly, the interviews are actually not a huge part of the college process at this point. Some of the top schools, the IVs and other things, do offer an interview, which you definitely should prepare for, and we do have resources for that. But it's not a big part of the actual admissions decision. That there was a time where that was different. But obviously, learning how to interview is going to be very beneficial for future jobs and things. Diversity and inclusion and Muslim community in school, then really credit. Um, Diversity and inclusion and Muslim community in school, and then really credit. So I'm not sure I understand the exact meaning of that, but definitely, uh, you know, diversity is a huge buzzword these days, and recently, as you might know, the Supreme Court banned race-conscious admissions, essentially affirmative action, where students from underrepresented ethnicities and races were sometimes given a preference. But as a result, it's become even more important if you do come from a diverse background, ethnically or socioeconomically or something, anything like that, to celebrate those things in the course of your essays, because the colleges aren't going to see your ethnicity or your race, in the hard information they have, but you absolutely can talk about it there. students who are currently applying to colleges. So like I said, for seniors, I have a program that I can talk about at the end of this called the Ihsan Admissions Intensive. And that's the current thing I'm really focused on, which is working with the seniors. How do we prepare for college? Definitely we're covering that. Thinking of going to Dubai, kids will be international IB school. How will this affect American college admissions? Great question. Doing IB program is really good because then you're sort of comparing apples to apples. The IB program is really well respected. Um, so uh, so that should uh, be okay. Obviously, it'd be better to talk directly about that, but certainly, especially if you are a U.S. citizen and so on, applying from overseas, it very much is possible. Best college that's good for the dean whilst going there. That is a great question. That's a big project that I've been working on, trying to re-rank the U.S. News and World Report like top 20, top 50 schools based on the quality of Muslim campus life. And there It's definitely something you should consider. And there are certainly some colleges that have a really great program. Just to give one shout out, University of Michigan at Ann Arbor has a really, really fantastic MSA, and they were one of the first schools, I think the first school in the country to have a Muslim chaplain. And doing some research, having that be part of your college search. So one of the things I highly recommend is actually going on college visits and try to find out what the Muslim community is like. Ask other people, ask the graduates of your school who are at certain schools. Do they have a Muslim chaplain? How many people are coming for Jummah? What is the sort of flavor of the MSA? Do they have halal food in the dining hall? Right? There are all sorts of concerns that we might have. You know, about college that other people aren't necessarily thinking about. Alhamdulillah, you have Model UN there. Suggest 2 years of college or starting at the university from the beginning, right? So that again, there's not a one size fits all recommendation. In general, sometimes financially, doing 2 years of like community college and then transferring can be the best financial decision. If a student is a very strong candidate, then there's a good chance that you can find admission to a 4-year university. And then obviously there's the financial piece to keep in mind. So there's some strategic conversations necessary there about what's best in each individual situation. Um, how can we prepare for PSAT as a 10th grader when our school does not offer it? Um, well, so the PSAT typically it is great if you're able to take it as a 10th grader. It's really good and important to take it as an 11th grader. It is possible to sometimes find seats for the PSAT at other schools by calling the guidance offices in the public schools in your own town, and seeing if they have extra seats. It's not always possible. It's pretty late in the game at this point to do that. Also, they've switched to the digital test, so I'm not as sure, but it's certainly something that you can reach out to the local public schools, and you know you can just sort of explain your situation and see if that's something they're able to cater to. Um, Pickleball for Palestine is a nice ring to it. I like it. How do podcasts do on college applications? Yep. So one of the things I'll talk about later is my Find Your Qibla program, which is all about launching passion projects, and podcasts are a popular one. So obviously, it's all about execution. Ideas, talk is cheap, right? So there are podcasts that really have enormous substance, and people have poured a lot of time and energy and learned a lot and built up an audience for their podcast. I have one of my former students has a podcast called Journey to Jannah, and she has tens of thousands of downloads on that, and a real readership, and she's built an online business behind it, and that was an amazing asset for her as she was applying to college. So you want there to be substance behind what it is. And then how important are SATs now that schools are no longer requiring? So SATs are still an important data point, especially at some of the top schools. During the pandemic, all schools went test optional, and now some of the top schools are bringing it back. In general, I would say take the SAT, do your best, and you can delay the decision of whether to actually use and send your scores until after you've taken the test a couple of times and sort of seen where you stand. It definitely is possible to apply to schools without sending SAT scores. Quite a few of my students in recent years, post-pandemic, we're doing that and getting great results going off to Ivy League schools and things like that. Of course, most of those schools have now reinstituted the SAT. All right, so that probably took a little longer than I'd hoped, but hopefully that provides some value of the exact questions that are on your mind. But let me go into the rest of the presentation, inshallah. All right, so we have some community-specific challenges within our community. So a lot of parents didn't go to university here, and they don't really understand the nuances of the application system. And even if you did go to college here, you probably went quite a few years ago, and if you're not really up to date on all the changes, our system is quite complex. It's not as simple as just taking one test and that determines everything. There's a lot of nuance to it, and especially the parents who didn't go to college here, they feel out of the loop and they don't know what to do for their kids, especially the oldest child and so on. There's a lack of high quality college content for the unique needs of the Muslim American audience. So like I was mentioning before, Muslim campus life has a huge impact on, should have a huge impact on our college decisions, but there's very little information out there, about this and about how to thrive as a Muslim on a college campus. And then, of course, there are fears of Islamophobia and fears about being too open with our convictions. Like for our children, many of the people within my audience, my 5 before college audience, are not just Muslims, but they're practicing Muslims who care deeply about the deen. It's like the central pillar of their identity. And to write a personal statement and to write a college essay without talking about it, they could not necessarily, convey their true story. But they have fears about, will this ostracize admissions officers? And there's definitely a way to do it, and there's also a way not to do it. So that's one of the other things I try to help with. So one of the biggest issues, and I think we're sort of addressing this today, especially given the younger side of the crowd, is that most people start this college journey too late. So lots of times people don't come to me or get really serious about the college admissions until their junior or senior year, right? And so one of the questions, and I think someone here asked it as well, is when should we start? And my answer is built into the name of my company, 5 before college. The time I really recommend that you get serious about college prep is 5 years before college, so way back in 8th grade, right? Why 8th grade? So 8th grade is sort of like the PSAT that we were just talking about. It's like a practice year. You don't, your grades and everything do not go to colleges that year, but if you do well that year, you're going to hit the ground running. That summer between 8th and 9th grade is already a time that you can start working towards college. Also, 8th grade is a big time where you're making decisions about where you want to go to high school. A lot of schools only go through 8th grade, and you're making a decision about what to do next. So it's an important year. But in general, my biggest piece of advice is, to start thinking about this early and start making strategic decisions early, and understanding this process from an early age, and it will make everything a lot easier. Because the reality is you become baligh, or mukallif, in the eyes of colleges once you hit 9th grade, right? In other words, from 9th grade on, your grades and your extracurriculars and everything, those are the things that colleges are going to see. And a lot of times when I meet with students, their overall cumulative GPA is pulled down by weaker grades in the first half of school when they didn't take things seriously. And then suddenly, they got more serious, but you can't go back in time. If I'm working with a senior, I can't go back and say, why did you spend the summer between 9th and 10th grade, you know, on Instagram and TikTok and Minecraft instead of, you know, um, doing something out there in the world. So you can't go backwards in time. Um, Okay. The other thing, the obvious question, okay, if we start 5 years early, what should we be doing with those 5 years? And so for this one, I turn to the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam shared a beautiful hadith in which he said, "Take benefit of five before five. Take اغتنموا خمسا قبل خمس. Your youth before your old age, your health before sickness, your wealth before poverty, your free time before busyness, and your life before death." Right? And so this is a beautiful hadith that has so much wisdom packed into it. And I believe it actually gives us sort of a roadmap or a guidance for what we should be doing during our high school life, to become the best Muslims that we can be, which in turn helps us become the best college candidates we should be. So take advantage of your youth before your old age. Your full-time job as a young person is to be a student. You are a full-time student. You're not off, most likely you're not off earning money for your family and doing all these kinds of things, right? And so the way students are measured is through academics. There's no getting around it that the single most important document when you're applying to college is your transcript. Okay, and your transcript includes not just your grades and your GPA, but also the courses that you took, right? So, I don't know exactly how Hidayah Academy is structured. Do you guys, can you put in the chat, do you do APs or IB or dual enrollment? How does it work? Dual enrollment. Okay. Uh, that's what I'm seeing. All right, so dual enrollment. So that's exactly the same as Al Noor. We also did dual enrollment. Okay, no AP. All right, good. So that's exactly the same as the school that I've been teaching at. And so some people ask, like, our school doesn't have APs, or will we not succeed? You're being evaluated based on how your school is structured. So the fact that no Al-Noor student has ever taken an AP clearly doesn't impact how they do, because from the year after year we send students off to top colleges. So academics, critically important. And what is the key to academics? In my belief, I firmly believe that it's reading, right? People who read, even if you're a quote unquote STEM person, if you read and you're interacting with ideas, right, you're going to be just much, much more interesting as a college candidate. As you can see, I have a few books behind me. This is not a virtual background. This is the real deal. And it is so critically important. When I meet a student who reads a lot, I used to teach sixth grade. When a student would come and brag about how they read 20 books over the summer, 7 years later, when I was helping place those kids in college, I never had a problem. Those kids were the ones who shined in the whole process. So read what you love until you love to read. Health before sickness, right? This is about, we spend a lot of time. Most Muslim families don't need to be told that grades are important. I think that's sort of well known, and there's a big focus on it within our community. What is sometimes less observed is the health before sickness is focusing on wellness of our body, right? And a lot of times that involves sports, right? Sports was such a huge part of my upbringing and continues to be a part of my life today. Tennis is probably one of my greatest passions. It's the vehicle that I've made the most friends as an adult. It's incredibly beneficial. So a lot of Islamic schools fall short in the sports area. They're just they are under-resourced. So this is something that I think families need to really think about. Get involved with the town sports program, especially for sisters too. It's important that they have avenues of exercise and taking care of their body, because you really need to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this. It's an amana. We need to treat it well, and it's a big part of being sort of mentally able to really focus in on our academics and everything, is having a good physical outlets. Wealth before poverty, right? So exploring careers is a critical thing to do that very few people don't do when they're in high school, right? So getting internships and doing other certificate programs, coding academies, and things like that, and getting sort of real world experience and understanding about what different careers consist of and thinking about it is really important. The other part of wealth is understanding the financial picture of college. We already sort of talked about that and touched upon it a little bit earlier. But college is one of the biggest investments that you're going to make, and it's really important to try to understand that in depth. So because some strategic decisions can have hundreds of thousands of dollars of implications. If you're able to get, unlock a 30,000 or $40,000 a year scholarship, right? You're talking something in the 120 to $150,000 less in expenses than you otherwise would have had. Free time before busyness, right? So uh this is where our extracurriculars and these things that we do outside of class come in. And later I will talk about what I believe is one of the best extracurriculars, which is actually starting a passion project all of your own, right? Starting a obviously there are extracurriculars like Model UN and like the debate club and like robotics and other things that might exist at your school or that you might be involved with outside of school, Taekwondo and other things, and those are all good, and you should definitely participate in them. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, everything like that. But having a passion project, which is something that just you alone are focused on, is an incredible asset in this whole process. And then your sohbah, your friendships, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? So surrounding yourself with people who remind you of Allah, who are positive people, who believe in your potential, right? Who are ambitious and are trying to make the most of their deen and dunya is very important. And then finally, life before death, right? Focusing on our character, right? Ultimately, positive character traits are one of the most important things that colleges look for. And they discover these largely in your essay, in your college essay and your supplemental essays, and they also discover it in your teacher recommendation letters and your counselor recommendation letter. So it's very important to focus on your character and your iman and all of that. Um, so alhamdulillah, this formula really does work. These are a few of the colleges that our students have gone to. The very first student I ever had to place in college got in early to Harvard. We sent quite a few to MIT, and many other top colleges. Uh, these are just a few things that some of my students mentioned, which I like because they, sort of illustrate some of my philosophy. Brother Hamza not only helped me reach the Ivy League, but also helped me figure out who I was. Right? So this self-exploration is so critically important. Hamza's help was a godsend. He brought a wealth of knowledge to the table, knowledge that I, as a first-generation American Muslim, was not privy to. MashaAllah, Amina went to Williams, which is an amazing college in Western Massachusetts, and then she spent a year at Oxford. She's really going places, mashallah. The way he speaks makes me want to open up a book and absorb new ideas. Love this one as an English teacher. This is like chicken soup to my soul. People talking about books and reading. Brother Hamza is the best teacher I've ever had. My family was very happy and proud of me because of him. And Brother Hamza changed my life. He opened my eyes to reality that life is more than just getting into a good college. So alhamdulillah. And life is a lot more, and it really isn't just about getting into a college. I want to do a little bit of question for you guys. What percentage of students do you think go to selective universities? And by selective, I define that as universities that accept 50% or fewer of their applicants. So they accept less than 1 out of every 2 applicants. What percentage of students who go to college go to that type of university, go to selective universities? So give me a percent in the chat. Okay, 5%. I want to see some more guesses coming in. 10%. Only a couple people guessing. 2%. Mashallah, that's almost right. All right, the answer is 3%. The answer is 3%. So only 3% of all the students who go to colleges with acceptance rates of less than 50%, selective colleges. So all of those top 20, even top 50 colleges, right? Fewer than 3% of students actually go to those colleges. So now, a lot of us want our own children to go to those colleges, and they're disproportionately within the Muslim world. Alhamdulillah, we really value education. We have a lot of amazing students, and I'm sure our percentage within our community is quite a bit higher than 3%. But the reality is that there are thousands, there are over 4,000 colleges, in the United States, and there are, lots of fantastic places. So it's really not just about getting into college, it's about getting through college, right? So you really want your college process to help you identify colleges where you can thrive and you can become the best version of yourself, right? Um, Only 50% of high school students actually attend college. Okay, so 50% never even go on to college. The number within the Muslim community, I don't have the exact statistic, but it's much higher. Most Muslim students do go on to college, but certainly not all. Um, but of those people who go, almost 5 million transfer college after 1 year, which to me speaks to the fact that they didn't get a lot of guidance about where to go, and they ended up at a school that wasn't the right fit for them, right? So that wastes time and money, right? So you don't really want that. You want to be serious about this during these 5 years, so that by the time you're making the decision, you're confident that you're making the right decision, right? The 4-year graduation rate is only 41%. So of those 50% of students who get into college, only 41% have graduated 4 years later, which is the typical progression. 6 years later, only 62%, right? And overall, there's an attrition rate of 40 to 50%, right? And so getting into college is not the challenge. The challenge is getting through college. We don't want our children to get into college and then not make it through. We want to give them the foundation, and the guidance to get into the right college, and then to stick with it, maintain their deen, and use college as a stepping stone to achieve their dreams, inshallah. Um, Okay, so my vision, why I founded this company and why I'm here with you today, is to help create a generation of spiritually intelligent Muslim leaders who are striving for Jannatul Firdaus by fixing our broken world, right? We live in fractured times. The news that we hear coming out of Gaza, coming out of Lebanon, coming out of all these conflicts around the world, and then the extreme polarization within America, and just things are broken, and we Muslims have a responsibility to put them back together. And in order to walk the halls of power and to be, have that type of systemic change, we often need to use college as a springboard to that. Right? I want to help create magnetic Muslims who attract people to Islam through their akhlaq. Okay, inshallah, I'll tell a little bit more about the story of how I became Muslim, but it was through a fellow student and his akhlaq and his generosity and his character that drew me like a magnet to Islam. I want to help Muslims build generational wealth that will fund institutions, right? Islamic schools struggle so much, masjids struggle so much because of funding, right? If usually when you ask, why we can't have more clubs, why we can't have, sports teams, it almost always comes down to resources, right? There is no lack of resources. The treasures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are enormous, and we have the ability, and I would say responsibility, to go off and do these things. So I've really changed my feeling about money over the course of my time. When I first became Muslim, I was so reluctant and worried and thought like that seeking to be wealthy was a sign of weakness of Iman. I really don't believe that. It can absolutely get you off track. And if you're the type of person who wealth is going to be their fitna and is going to move them away from deen, then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that, right? But still, we do need Muslims who are doing this. And finally, broadening the scope of professions we pursue, right? So there's the big three. Can you guys guess in the chat, what do you think the big three professions that Muslims tend to pursue? When I ask a family, what they want to do, what their child wants to do. CS, that's number four, actually. CS is sort of fourth one. Engineer, doctors, and law. There it is. Okay. IT, medicine, law. Yep. So usually engineering. So engineering could be computer engineering. So you got it, right? Those are all great professions, and there's a decent chance that that might be a great profession for you or for your child. But there are so many other professions out there, right? There are so many other things. We need Muslim entrepreneurs. We need Muslim journalists, right? We need Muslim architects. We need Muslims of all stripes, right? And the reality is that most, so many people end up changing their major. People change their major, 80% of people change their major at least one time. Right? So a lot of people who say that they're pre-med, they get into college, they take organic chemistry, and they quickly change their tune. So we should be exploring these other careers. And sometimes we're trying to force, the square peg of Ahmed into the round hole of medicine, right? And it's just it's a bad fit, and it doesn't end up leading towards success. Yeah, someone said the issue is they follow where the money is. Listen, I don't have the slide here. Those professions, yes, you can make a lot of money, right? But there's a cap to what you can make within those professions, right? The wealthiest doctor might be making $1 million a year, or maybe even more if they're a neurosurgeon and they're in high demand, right? But that is like chump change to, Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. The people who make the most money are actually business owners, right? There's an uncapped potential for making money when you actually start an institution and a business of your own, right? If you sell yourself by the hour, no matter how high your hourly rate is, there is a cap to it, right? But if you figure out a way to make money while you're sleeping, now of course, if you go into those high end professions, then you can make a lot of money, and then you can invest it, and you can have the money, make money while you sleep. But it's critically important, to really understand the financial world and how it works, and how people can really get ahead. All right. So this is a WhatsApp group. If you have your phone, I know some of you are probably joining on your phone. Here I can how can I do this? Let me see if I can hold on. I have an idea. Let me just stop sharing for 1 second. I'm gonna go into my WhatsApp so I can put it in the chat. This WhatsApp group, mashallah, has been a huge blessing. Alhamdulillah. I actually run 3 different WhatsApp groups, and we have over 2,000 people in them. And I learn so much every single day, from these WhatsApp groups. Here is the join link copy. Put that in the chat. So if you're not a part of this group already, and you'd like, I highly recommend joining it. Is my audio still okay? It's saying I have low system resources.
Yeah, your audio's fine.
It's fine. Great. Okay. So I highly recommend joining that group if you want to, keep the conversation going and also learn from so many other people. Let me go back to this. Come on, slideshow. All right. So the 5 sort of, I know we've already talked about a lot of stuff, and the stuff we've talked about is critically important. But in terms of like specific topics, I want to briefly go through 5 ideas. So starting with your intention, finding your why, excelling academically by tapping into the power of barakah, upgrading your mindset, standing out by standing up for the deen, and then what actually happens behind the scenes of a college admissions office. So let's get into those things. So إنما الأعمال بالنيات. We all know this hadith. This is the first hadith in Imam Nawawi's collection, but it's critically important that we have the right intention for going to college, right? When I ask people what their intention for going to college is, usually and understandably and with no judgment, their intention is that they want to make more money. They want the prestige and associated with getting into a top school, right? They want professional and financial stability. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. But let's upgrade our niyyah. Our niyyah for going to college should be to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our niyyah for going to college should be, this is a means of us, earning credentials that are going to allow us to fix this crumbling, broken world in order to have deeds to present to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Right? When we upgrade that intention, our studies become ibadah, right? So it's critically important, right? Also, we need to discover what we're all about. What is our why, right? So this is called the ikigai, right? So this is I call it a Japanese Venn diagram on steroids, right? And this is something that I was introduced to when I was sort of trying to figure out what to do next. I felt like I'd reached the cap of what I could accomplish within the school setting, and I took a great class taught by Peter Gould, who's a convert, Muslim convert from Australia. And he taught me this ikigai, and I now work through it with my students in my Find Your Qibla program, and it's incredibly clarifying. And adults sometimes like it even more than students. So the idea of the ikigai is that you want to find something at the center of these four overlapping circles. What you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. Okay, what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and what the world needs. Right? And the problem for many of us is that we end up in careers that fill some of these quadrants, but not others. So a lot of people end up in corporate careers, right? A lot of successful people. I don't know what professions all of you are in, but a lot of people end up in corporate careers, and a lot of those, they're doing something that they're good at, inshallah. They're doing something they can be paid for, and they're probably paid quite well, right? And a lot of them are doing something that they genuinely love, right? That they genuinely love. But a lot of times what they feel and what they report is they're not doing something that the world needs, right? They don't feel like that day after day I'm making more and more money for this corporation, but sometimes the corporation has come out with anti Palestine things and other things that just don't align with their values, right? For myself, I would say, for many years as a teacher at an Islamic school, I was doing something that I loved, right? I was doing something that, inshallah, I was good at. I've been doing it for a long time. I was doing something that the world desperately needs, guidance for our Muslim teens, right? But for better or worse, just to call a spade, it's not something that you can be paid for. It's not something that you can be paid very well for, right? Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always put barakah in my rizq, and inshallah, my intention was pure, and I have absolutely no regrets about doing what I did for many years. But the reality is that teaching is, especially within the Islamic school setting, requires you to take the barakah discount, right? And I think it's not until now, right, at 45 years old, that I really discovered my purpose. My purpose, right, like, I love entrepreneurship. I love the challenge of running a business of my own, but also the impact that I can have is so much broader and deeper. I have met so many amazing people, amazing students, amazing families since doing this, and hopefully have brought a lot of khair to the world and helped uplift the ummah. Nothing, I can't see anything that I could do that would be more meaningful than trying to change the world one teenager at a time, trying to inspire Muslim teens to strive for the highest levels of the akhirah and strive for the highest levels of success in the dunya, right? That is my ikigai. That is my reason for being. If we can help our teens discover this when they're young, right, it has a dramatic impact on how how they spend their time in college, they get the most out of it, right? And this is one of the main things I really focus on in my Find Your Qibla program, which is something I do with people from grades 8 through 11, is helping them really discover this and come up with a real vision for what they even want to do with their life. So then they can go off and get it, inshallah. Um, all right. The next thing, excel academically by tapping into barakah, right? Um, barakah is the quality that a small amount of something goes a long way, right? And so we want to have barakah in our time, right? Most of us, we say we're so busy, right? That's like the American way, right? We're just, oh, so busy. When you ask anyone, and you ask students who have a lot on their plate, oh, so busy. We want to really do well academically by learning how to tap into the unseen power and how to tap into the barakah in our studies. So some of them are we should take practices that are typically associated with worship and actually apply them. If our studies are ibadah, we should study in a state of wudu. People have reported to me that when they study in a state of wudu, they just have much more sakina in their studies and much more benefit, right? Before a test or before studying, we can pray 2 rak'ahs of salah. Use our Islamic tools in order to draw from the barakah. Also, there are certain times of the day, right? Rasulullah SAW made dua for the early morning, right? Oh Allah, bless my ummah and what they do early. There's tremendous barakah in that time, right? So sort of from tahajjud all the way up until maybe 9, 10 o'clock, right? I can get more done in an hour or two after Fajr than I can in 4 hours, 5 hours in the afternoon. There's just barakah in that time. But most teenagers, I mean, obviously during the week, they're usually having to go to school. And then on the weekends, they're typically sleeping and they're losing out on that time. A lot of Westerners have discovered this, right? There are books like this one, The 5 a.m. Club, Own Your Morning, Elevate Your Life. All these people are doing, they're stumbling upon or accidentally practicing, Islamic practices of waking up early, waking up, before the sunrise and so on. I'm finding, subhanAllah, there's so much khair and barakah in that time. The other thing is, in order to excel academically, we need to become much more focused, right? We need to become much more efficient and get over our procrastination. So two very tactical, practical time management strategies. One is called eat the frog, right? So I know that sounds a little bit gross, right? But what this means is the frog is that thing that we have, that task that we have, that is the thing we are least looking forward to, the thing oftentimes that we have been procrastinating on, that's been on our to-do list for the last 2 weeks, and every day it moves to the next day, right? It's the thing that we are avoiding. It's often the thing that we're afraid of, right? That it's a difficult conversation that we need to have. It's an assignment, it's our college essay, it's something that we know is really important. So as a result, right, we're just trying to avoid it as much as we can. If you identify your frogs, right? And then the first thing you do during that early part of the day or whenever you start your work is you attack just that frog, that most important thing, the highest leverage activity you can do. And adults can find their frogs too. This is by no means related to students. In fact, almost every time I give this lecture, someone will reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. That stuff about eating the frog was so helpful. I'm eating my frogs today. I'm feeling great." So if all you do is tackle your frogs and you knock out one frog a day for the next 2 weeks, you'll be insanely productive. People will be like, who is this person? Never seen like there's some major change that's happened to you, right? Because what we lack is not time, what we lack is focus. And when you figure out what you really need to do and you think carefully about that and then you just do it, you actually push your goals forward, then you have tremendous impact. And how do you eat the frog, right? One thing I would highly recommend is trying out the Pomodoro method. So the Pomodoro method, the idea here is that you choose one task. So choose your frog, right? And then you set a timer for 25 minutes. Pomodoro means tomato in Italian. There used to be a tomato timer that you twist. So you set a timer for 25 minutes, and then during those 25 minutes, you lock in on just that one task, just that frog, right? When the 25 minutes are up, right? Your alarm goes off, you take a break. You take a 5-minute break, you go drink some water, do some jumping jacks, do something different, and then come in for another Pomodoro. And these like locked in periods of focus are tremendously beneficial, right? Because instead what happens is, we have to do the ramp up where we're checking our email and we're looking at, different websites and so on. And we wait until we finally we're in study zone, right? And then, it takes so hard to ramp up and so on. This is a way, to just flip the switch and be productive, from the beginning. Um, Hamza, this is one of my students, Inji, who followed a lot of these things. It is rare to find a mentor so deeply invested in the success and happiness of their students. Brother Hamza not only spent the time to get to know every one of his students on a personal level, but he was also incredibly knowledgeable about how to use that information to their benefit. During the beginning of my college application process, Brother Hamza set me up with a strong foundation, pushing me to reflect on the experiences that shaped me. Right, so mashallah, Inji went off to Brown. She's now graduated from Brown. She's now going to medical school. Mashallah, she's an amazing young woman. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect her. She's also a like someone I look up to so much on the Deen side. She is someone who absolutely has her priorities straight. All right, next up, upgrade your mindset. Right, so the older I get, the more I realize that so much of success has to do with what's happening up here in our brains, the way the conversations we're having with ourselves, the stories we're telling ourselves about our life, right? We have so much impact, and we don't understand, how deep that impact is, right? So one hugely important thing is this concept that your I can is more important than your IQ, right? Your I can is more important than your IQ, right? So school privileges a certain type of intelligence, quote unquote, book smarts, right? Which can often be measured by something like an IQ test, right? And so people often, their self-conception is hugely shaped, by how they're doing academically. But how you do academically has almost nothing to do with how you ultimately do in your life and in terms of your accomplishments, right? What does have a huge amount to do with that is whether you actually get things done, right? Whether you actually have this I can attitude, whether when you're faced with an obstacle or a challenge, right, you have that how can I figure this out attitude, right? And so many people, they just simply don't. This is especially true, I think, of students for whom academics come somewhat easily, right? Our A students, our 4.0 GPA students, a lot of them are actually quite fragile emotionally. When I went to Harvard, Hamza, throughout my high school career and career, I had always done really well academically. When I suddenly got to Harvard and level of the instruction was so much more, I had deep imposter syndrome. I remember taking test in a Shakespeare class, and Shakespeare, this was like right in my wheelhouse, and I got a C on my first ever test or quiz in college, and I was like, I don't belong here. This isn't for me, right? And it changed like my self-conception. But the reality is that we can accomplish anything, and we need to believe in ourselves. We need to have an almost irrational level of self-belief. Of course, the reality is that we shouldn't believe in ourselves, right? We shouldn't believe in ourselves because ultimately we are weak, we are human beings, we are fallible, right? But the reality is we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And when we have Iman, right? Your Iman is the source of your Ikan. Your iman is the source of your I can, right? Your iman is the thing which gives you that confidence, right? That when we make dua, when we beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we dream big, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who can make those dreams come true, right? And we need to instill this belief in our children, right? That they can go off and they can do great things. And too many of us just are not dreaming big. We're thinking small. We're not playing big. And we need to expand that vision, right? And this has a dramatic impact on how colleges perceive you. Like so many people, they're bending over backwards to do things that they think colleges will like. When you come up with a vision for your life, when you find your ikigai and you take on this attitude that I'm going to get there with you or without you, right? I don't need, I mean, you don't literally say this, but it's in your attitude. I don't need you, Harvard. I don't need you, MIT. I don't need you, Yale or Johns Hopkins or whichever school it is. Um, I'm going to achieve my goals with or without you, right? So you might as well, accept me so that I can be a part of your story and so on. When you have that level of self-belief, then you actually go off and can achieve your goals. Um, Right. And how do we do this? We have to adopt a bias for action, right? We've always heard talk is cheap, right? The students who really excel in the college process and the people who really go off and change the world, right? They actually take action, right? It's easy to come up with plans and but so many people they have some idea, they know what they sort of want to do, but they're just afraid to actually launch it. They're afraid to take the leap and do it. This was me for many, many years, right? I've had this idea of starting my own company and going off on my own, right? But it's scary, right? To go from, getting a regular paycheck and being part of something to try to do something all on your own. It's difficult, right? To jump off the cliff and then build the airplane on the way down. It's challenging, but those are the people who actually do things. So don't wait for confidence in order to start. Start in order to build confidence, right? If you're always waiting for your ducks to be in a row, the ducks will never all be in a row. The reality is you get your ducks in a row by making the first step, right? And so specifically in terms of advice for parents and during these 5 years of before college, the first half of high school, right? So eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade, those years, think of it as like an all-you-can-eat buffet where you're trying to sample different things, right? The first time, if I'm at an all-you-can-eat buffet, I like it's a very strategic thing for me. You go up and you take a little bit of everything there because you're testing out to see which things you like, and then you go back and you eat it, and you realize that I really love the grape leaves and I love the lamb chops, and then you go back and that's when you pile your plate nice and high. And so the same idea for high school. Try out a bunch of different things. You don't Passion doesn't just strike you like a lightning bolt. People are always saying, I don't have any passions. I don't know what my passion is. Passions don't just magically appear for you. You try different things out and they you discover that I really really love this. I love debate. I'm obsessed with chess. Like designing video games is why I was put on this earth. Whatever it is, right? You have to try these things and that will help you discover what you're really passionate about. So the other question I get all the time is, should my child be well-rounded or should they be pointy, right? And pointy means they have one or two things that they've gone really deep in. And overwhelmingly, I would say that the advice college-wise is to try to become pointy. Try to figure out during early on in high school, what are one or two passions, what are one or two things that you really deeply care about, right? And just go deep on those things. They can be things like beekeeping. Like I had a student who they read Surah Nahl and it just captured their imagination. They loved bees, they loved the story of bees, they knew so much about bees. They created like an apiary in their backyard, and it was amazing, right? And their love for that project shone through on their application. So it doesn't really matter what it is that you love. Just find the thing that you love and then really go for it, right? And above all, banish analysis paralysis, like this, trying to analyze things and so on, right? Follow this advice of Yoda. Yoda said, do or do not, there is no try, right? So when people tell me, yeah, I'll try to get the essay to you by tomorrow, like that is not, you are not building confidence that that's going to happen, right? We use inshallah as that way. Like there's different types of inshallah, right? A lot of times when people ask you to come and you have no intention of coming, you say, Inshallah, Inshallah, if Allah wills, right? But we should set a high intention. Inshallah, I'll be there unless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills something major to happen. So do or do not, there is no try. Okay, get in there. Stand out by standing up for the deen, right? There's only one thing that you probably see in this photo, right? There's only one thing that you see in this photo. You see that red umbrella, right? And this is what you want your application to look like when you're applying to college, right? When you're applying to college, the admissions officer has like 50 or 60 applications to read in a day. Most of them look like those black umbrellas. Most of them fade into like just saying the gray area of saying the same thing. Okay, they're a good student and they got their 1450 on the SAT, and they write the same sort of essay, right? But they just fade into the gray area, right? What you want to do, your job is to stand out like that red umbrella. And one way that you can stand out, right, is by standing up for the deen, right? So the brother who introduced me to Islam, his name was Nabil, right? We went to a boarding school together. And so I met Nabil when I was 14 years old. So 14 years old in ninth grade, we were in the bathroom every night and we'd be brushing our teeth. And Nabil, meanwhile, was doing this like weird ritual with the water, and he'd like run it up and down his arms, and then he'd do these like aggressive like blowing of his nose into the sink, right? And then he'd put his feet in the sink. We're like, who is this kid? What is he all about? It doesn't make any it doesn't make any sense. Then he'd go back to his dorm room and he'd call the adhan out loud. So we'd just be walking down the halls of St. Mark's School, a Christian boarding school, and we'd hear Allahu Akbar, right? And we'd peek around and we'd see Nabil with his forehead on the ground, right? And it obviously it made us ask questions. He used to have the miswak, right? So we'd see him brushing his teeth with, this root of a tree, right? He used to eat with his hands as much as possible, right? So he was practicing the sunnah, right? And the sunnah has a magnetic attraction, right? And being different and standing up for the deen, right, has this magnetic attraction. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there's a beautiful hadith. He said, Islam began as something strange and will revert to being strange as it began. So give glad tidings to the strangers. So we've been given, whether we were born Muslim or we accepted Islam, we've been given the greatest blessing that we could have been given, the ability to say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah with belief and yaqeen in that meaning, right? And yet most Muslim teenagers are afraid to stand out. They are afraid to pray in public. They're afraid to make wudu, right? They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to be seen as different, right? There's this huge emphasis on fitting in, right? If you're at the center of the herd, right, there might be a lot of comfort from that, but the view is terrible. You want to be an outlier, right? And you can be an outlier by standing up and practicing as much of the deen and becoming the best Muslim that you can be. And when you do that, not only does it obviously, inshallah, get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it also helps you stand out within this college process. So try to have the akhlaq and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in your life, and you will see tremendous things happen for you. Um, so this is another student of mine, Dina. When I first met Brother Hamza, I was in eighth grade. He treated me like I wasn't a child, even though I was, and technically still am. He received all my ridiculousness with appreciation and understanding. He showed me that someone like me could live an interesting, fulfilled life. Up until becoming a student, I felt like an outlier for whom there was no place in the normal world. But in fact, there was a place for people like me, his classroom. MashaAllah. And Dina went off to MIT. She was the president of the MIT MSA for 3 years. She got her master's there as well. She's now working for Microsoft. And this is someone coming from a small Islamic school, that very few people had heard of. And so it's tremendously rewarding, helping students like that. All right, and last major piece, understand what happens behind the scenes, right? So what I'm going to say now really applies to highly rejective schools. In other words, these selective schools, the schools with the, 20% or lower acceptance rates. At schools that are, where most students go, right? The admissions process is somewhat of a formality. There's no danger that you will not get into college, right? Inshallah, all of you will get into college, right? If you want to go to college, there will be colleges out there for you. But to get into the best college for you and to get into the college with the right fit, right? Then you need to focus on some of these things, right? So one big idea here is colleges very quickly have to make decisions about who you are. They're trying to sum you up in just a few words, right? And so essentially they're spending about 5 to 7 minutes with your application, maybe up to 10 minutes, but not very much time at all. And they're trying to summarize who you are. So you want to take charge of this process by thinking about how you want to present your story, right? And I ask students to try to boil it down to a two-word summary, right? So you could be the classical coder. So this was one of my students, and her two passions were she was really passionate about CS. She'd taken all the CS classes she could take at school, and then some, Coursera and edX classes. She'd done, coding academies, and she had, experience in the real world actually implementing, tools like that. Her other pointy thing, her other passion was for Latin and Greek, right? So seemingly totally different things. She wrote a college essay about something about like what Julius Caesar can teach us about algorithms, right? Very, very out of the box thinking, right? But it showed like a level of intellectual vitality. So ancient texts guide new algorithms into existence. That's her 7-word memoir. So you go for a 2-word summary and then a 7-word memoir, right? So the 2-word summary, quarterback poet, right? Immediately, if I say the quarterback poet, immediately you understand who that kid is. That's such an easier story for the admissions officer to tell, right, than someone who doesn't go through this process and their applications all over the place. He throws touchdowns by day, drops bars by night. The historian gamer, the kid who's obsessed with gaming, right? And he's obsessed with history. Virtual pasts come alive through play. One of my students in Find Your Qibla from last summer, those were his two obsessions, right? He loved history and he loved games, and he's building a video game, right, from scratch, where you go and you like fight against people from the past, so like Genghis Khan, for example, right? And so it forces him to do all sorts of historical research and also figure out the level of gameplay and so on to make it a fun, challenging game. Amazing project. The Hafiz mathematician, the beekeeper biologist, right? So all of these things. I think for the interest of time, we're not going to actually do this activity, but this is a chance for you guys to write your 7-word memoirs. But I want to leave a little time for more questions at the end, so I'm gonna just skip through that one. All right, so 2 ways to upgrade your college search. One is to broaden the aperture of your college search. So think of colleges and learn about colleges that are beyond the brand names, because the brand name schools are great, and if you're a really strong student, then it might make sense to apply to those. But there are so many other great colleges out there. If you're able to broaden the geography of your search, right? So you guys are in the sort of DMV area. If you're able to apply to schools in New England or in the South or on the West Coast or in the Midwest and so on, right? That can have a dramatic impact on your chances of admission, because they just don't see as many students from those areas. And then really think about the quality of Muslim campus life, right? I worked with a brother who I'm not going to mention the name of the school because he said the quality of Muslim life was really, really bad. And then he went to Stanford for graduate school, and he was like, wow, there are so many services here for Muslims. He was like blown away by the difference between, his two college experiences, and he realized how important that was. And then be strategic in your choice of major, right? So many people, we have the big three. We have medicine, we have engineering, we have, law, CS, right? So CS and engineering and medicine, pre-med, are three of the most competitive majors, right? And it is more difficult to get into schools when you indicate those as your preferences. Now, some schools it's very difficult to change into engineering and so on, and so you do need to do a lot of research when making these decisions, but try to be a little bit strategic, right? If I had applied to Harvard and I had put a different sort of major, I think it would have been harder for me. Instead, I put a fairly niche major, Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations, right? I was a Muslim convert who, had recently become Muslim. I didn't even know the Arabic alphabet when I was applying to college. And, I talked very openly about how I wanted to learn the Deen, and I also wanted to be a bridge between, the West and the Middle East, and try to bring these two groups together with my sort of dual personality, and that clearly resonated with the admissions office. So consider some other majors. Consider some things within liberal arts and humanities, right? A lot of students come to me and they're clearly humanities focused. That's where they love. They're so afraid that they're never going to make any money, or their parents are afraid they're never going to make any money doing that. That's just not true. So many of my classmates who studied things within liberal arts that don't have obvious business applications and professional applications end up doing tremendously well in their careers because they learned how to think. And then just also look at your extracurriculars, look at what you actually did, and apply in a way that really makes sense, right? And then the two of the biggest things you can do is starting a passion project, right? Starting a passion project, and crafting a top tier application. So a passion project, right? I've already mentioned a few with the like historian gamer and things like that. One of my students in Find Your Qibla, she wants to create a prophetic vegetable garden. So one of the things she's passionate about is like, urban blight and what's happened. She's from Michigan, and so Detroit has really degraded, and the inner city is not very safe, and their whole uh, you know um, blocks of the city that are just undeveloped. And so she wants to put together a campaign to purchase one of those blocks, which actually you can do for less than $5,000. And then she wants to put in a prophetic vegetable garden, a garden where she grows fruits and vegetables mentioned in the Quran, right? So you can imagine when she writes her college essay and she talks about building a prophetic vegetable garden in the heart of Detroit, like that's the red umbrella story, right? No one else is going to have that story, and it aligns with her qibla, it aligns with what she cares about, right? Another student, Hamda, I just saw her when I was in California, and she actually spoke to the crowd at the presentation I was giving. She's doing this elder wisdom project where she's going to nursing homes and she's interviewing the elderly and getting their life stories and getting their advice, and then she's putting it together in various different formats: podcasts, YouTube shorts, and then a blog, written thing. So it's sort of like Humans of New York, but for the elderly. And this totally aligns with her lifelong goal of becoming a geriatrician. With my son, we're doing something called Halal Jerky Boys. We both love beef jerky, and I want to teach him about entrepreneurship. So he's just in seventh grade, but we've gotten a food dehydrator and we've practiced all sorts of different recipes, and we're trying to start a small business called Halal Jerky Boys. And then the second thing is crafting a top tier application. Right? Your application, no one can compete with you on being you. So having an application that's very, very strong is critically important, right? Focus on the why over the what, right? So the what is covered, you have your activities list and so on, but your essays and so on, you need to get at your deeper motivations. You need to show that vulnerability and that growth that you've had, right? And so your college essay and your supplements are critically important in this whole process, right? Um, and again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read this whole college essay. But like I said, I wrote 30 college essays in 30 days. This is one of them. It was about my name, right? My name I've had a lot of names. Even, when I was born, I had four names: John Marshall McCormick Henshaw. Then I had an initial Muslim name, Mahbub Chaiwala, which later became Mahbub Allah, and eventually became Hamza. And essentially, I tell the story of those changing of my names, and through that, you learn a tremendous amount about me. And you can see essentially that I have these two different sides of me. Marshall, meet Hamza, right? So you have the American hiker, type going to national parks, and then you have me, going for, Hajj and Umrah and so on, right? And you have me in my Desi wedding outfit with and then you have me, at an American event with my stepfather, dressed very differently. And that's sort of what I talked about myself as a cultural chameleon, right? Who is very comfortable moving back and forth between different identities, right? And that just captures who I am really well. Um, so if anyone's interested, here I'll put the link in the chat. You can actually get a copy of the 30 college essays in 30 days if you are thinking of ever writing college essays. You can get that. Last thought here. This is a hadith Qudsi. Rasulullah SAW, tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "O dunya, serve the one who serves me and enslave the one who serves you. O dunya, serve the one who serves me and enslave the one who serves you." So to get into the best college, don't make college your qibla. Don't put the college on a pedestal, right? Think beyond the college, right? And serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make, these things subservient to us. So develop that long-term goal, right? And so the two main programs that we offer, I've mentioned them a couple times. Find Your Qibla, right? And then the Ihsan Emissions Intensive. Find Your Qibla is really about helping students discover their purpose, discover their passion, and that's what we do in sort of the first half of the 8-week program. And in the second half, we try to zero in on a passion project that's something that's going to be that they can invest in, it's called a Saturday morning project because they're willing to wake up early on a Saturday morning and get going on that project, and that gives them great fulfillment, but it also becomes a centerpiece of their college application. And then the other major program that we're actually offering right now, this is for seniors who are actually applying to college. This is sort of the comprehensive college package of getting help on building your college list, getting help on crafting your application and writing your essays, getting help on figuring out how to keep the costs down of scholarships and so on. So that's something that we're currently doing. If anyone is interested in actually meeting directly with me, this is a way you can book a free 30-minute meeting. If you're interested in learning anything more, I'll put the thing there. And yeah, I think we've hit the 8:30 mark. For the people who are still here, I'd be really interested. What is the most memorable thing you learned today? Like from this presentation, what is your big takeaway? Like if you had to, tell someone, the most important thing that you learned, could you just type in the chat, um, uh, what you did? Eating frogs is good. Someone said the 2-word and 7-word thing. Nice. The 2-word summary and the 7-word memoir. Nice. What else? The Ikigai. Beautiful. College essay. Stand up to stand out. Yep, stand up for your Muslim identity to stand out. The college essay and how it works. Create your own passion project. Excellent. Yep, Ikigai. Do or do not, there is no try. Nice. Some of these are coming in as direct messages. Coming from a small school can work to a student's advantage. I'd like to learn more about this. Excellent. Muslim identity. Beautiful. Waking up early. Alhamdulillah. And now we actually have to implement it, right? I was really tired from traveling yesterday and I slept after Fajr. I almost never do that. And I felt like I didn't have the same upgrading your mindset. Beautiful. Excellent. So that's pretty much all I had to share, but I am happy to stick around and answer questions. We're also in a meeting format, so anyone who wants, can unmute and come on camera, or you can put the questions in the chat if you're more comfortable with that. And anyone who has other places to go and things to do, this was scheduled for 90 minutes, but I'm happy to stick around for a bit longer to answer any questions that people might have. So Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Hidayah Academy, for setting this all up. I will try to follow up with the slides. So if you know, registered for the webinar, I'll have your email and I'll be able to send the recording and slides and so on. Yep. So I will share it through email. So Bismillah, any questions? Again, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself, or you can just leave it in the chat. And
Assalamu
alaikum salam.
Jazakallah khair for that session. So just like maybe if you can give a pointer to, like I had mentioned before, this is a smaller school, so and there's no set like college counselor. And I know that you offer that training, but it's still different than having like a full-time counselor on board who's just like guiding students to opportunities. So what advice would you give to the parents? Like where should we go about
Mm-hmm.
looking for these opportunities? Any tips and pointers there would be
So,
appreciated.
so how does college work? Like clearly, if people are applying to college, someone is filling in the counselor report on the Common App, uploading transcripts and so on. So do you know whose responsibility that is at the school?
I believe it's the head of school.
Okay. So and that's how a lot of Islamic schools, that's sort of how they've developed. How big is the senior class at Hidayah Academy? How many students?
I think this year it's like around 9.
Okay. Yeah, so it's still small and you know, and I wore a lot of hats at my school. I wasn't just the college counselor, right? I was the dual enrollment coordinator, I was the high school English teacher, I was the assistant head of school, right? So it's pretty common at schools, but essentially that head of school, you know, to some extent is the guidance counselor. So I definitely um you know uh uh would advocate for that. And if that is, a role that is, they don't have a lot of time for, it is a high leverage thing to bring onto campus, and so on. But in the in the interim, and obviously, like, it would be great for them to take the professional development thing, because we really do break it down step by step, and also learn from other people. There are other Muslim schools that do a really good job with this. But um, like that WhatsApp group is really good, and you'll find other people from your local area. There's also a lot of online programs that people are constantly sharing and so on. So summer is really an important time. So planning really productive summers, after ninth, 10th, and 11th, especially after 11th grade, there are lots of internship and other opportunities that you can discover through, obviously through web searches. You might be able to talk to the guidance counselor in the, public school in your town and ask them, advocate for yourselves. And there's also, I'm sure there are websites. I know here in Boston, I publish it. In fact, on our website, let me find the link. Oops. I have a link to some great internship resources. Give me 1 second. Um, all right, for some reason things are going slowly. Resources. All right, so this is sort of my personal website, but it's where this particular file lives. So inside of that, there are links to various programs. There is somewhat of a Boston bias to it, because that is where I was based, and I do know more about the programs up here. Although many of them are open to to others and so on. But I'm sure there are similar resources for for the Virginia area, inshallah, as well. Um, and a lot of it is just like, once you know to look for it, once you know to search for it, once you know to talk to other parents, and you get in groups like that WhatsApp group with people with similar interests, you start learning more and more about things. Yeah. Brother Shafi?
Assalamu alaikum. I just have a question. I'm
Yep.
in ninth grade. I'm wondering, How would I get my letters of recommendation? How would I get my letters of recommendation?
Yeah, so typically the letters of recommendation come from teachers who have taught you usually in the second half of high school, so you're not quite there yet, unless you apply to a summer program that needs one or something like that. But pretty much you you ask the teachers who you know really well, who you have a good connection with, to write a letter of recommendation for you. There's something called a brag sheet, which is a place where you can sort of give sort of a summary of who you are. Essentially, you want to make it as easy as possible for the teacher to write a really good recommendation letter for you. So I have a really good form for that, which has questions that you can fill in to give teachers background about yourself so that they can likely include in the recommendation letter. But most likely you'll be asking someone who taught you in 11th or 12th grade. Although at Islamic schools with dual enrollment programs, sometimes you don't know those college professors as well. So there are often teachers there on campus. One of the big things that we'll talk about in that professional development is the art of writing recommendation letters. I think one of the reasons why my students tended to do really well was I put a lot of effort into their recommendation letters and really tried to contextualize them and explain who they are, what the school is all about, and so on. And that can make a really big difference, in college admissions, and so on.
Okay,
Um,
thank
yeah. Other questions? Yes, Sister Tiffany.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm just
Alaikum.
wondering, what's the best way for students to go about obtaining scholarships, whether it's directly through the schools they're applying to, or if they're just kind of broad-based, affinity-based
Yep.
scholarships?
So, great question. So the biggest money that's out there are school-based scholarships, merit-based scholarships, which oftentimes you don't have to apply separately for. Um, and the way you sort of unlock, there are good databases that talk about schools that tend to be the most generous with merit aid, and so putting some of those schools on your college list can be very helpful. But then also being the best student you can be. Some of those schools are not the top tier school. They're still very, very good schools. But if your sort of stats and profile is considerably stronger than their average student, right, then a lot of times those schools will work desperately hard to try to attract you. So I've had students who go to Northeastern, which is a fantastic school. It has like a less than 10% acceptance rate at this point, right? But who also maybe got into an Ivy League school as well. And Northeastern knows that the only way to compete for those top students is to offer them, a lot of money. Even, they've gotten rid of it, unfortunately, but there used to be a full ride scholarship at Northeastern. Um, Beyond that, there are third-party scholarships, and so there are a lot of databases that include those things like Unigo and CapEx. My favorite one is called Going Merry, like Merry Christmas, Going Merry. They're like clearinghouse databases with thousands and thousands of scholarships. Uh, it's tricky though to find ones that you qualify for, and then to just sort of manage the deadlines. I've taught my students many times about scholarships, but only a small handful of them, the real go-getters, actually go through with the process. Um, in the end, like there are some really big scholarships, the Coca-Cola scholarship and Gates scholarship and things like that, which have really huge awards. But a lot of the scholarships have $500 here, $1,000 there, but it can all add up. So yeah, it's almost like a full-time job, like finding the scholarships. This is a place where parents can be helpful on the research side. And then once you've written a couple of essays, you can usually repurpose them, for the scholarships. So some people are just really, really good and practical and come up, they figure out all the deadlines, they sort it within a spreadsheet, and then they're just, they, spend a couple hours a weekend, just clicking send on scholarships, and they do come through. There are a lot of things that very, very few people apply for, and you can get money from them. So yeah. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Right. Well, Alhamdulillah, thank you so much. Like I said, I've been doing this talk in person, not this talk, but talks like this in person, for the past week. But it's nice to be here on Zoom. I actually really like the chat feature. It's easier in some ways to be more interactive with people here. So it was really a great opportunity. That said, I would love to actually meet you guys in person. So if I'm down in the area, I will try to reach out. It would be amazing to see you. And if anyone is interested in learning more about me and what I do, then you've gotten the links, and hopefully you join the WhatsApp group and other things like that. So I look forward to being a part of your story and learning from you as well. So Jazakallahu khair. It was a real pleasure. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah. Okay.